welcome back to Arsenal Pass. I'm Hayden Dow here with Brennan Patrick, and we've got a bit of a special video for you today. Deck Tech, the man sitting next to me here on screen, has just won a Road to Nationals. So Brennan, how about you tell us about that Road to Nationals a little bit? And I think you're going to lead with what was your record in the day?
Yep, so I had a 9-0 record. I didn't drop any games throughout the day. And it was a very interesting experience, right? I went down to Houston. Just to kind of look at it from, what my season will look like, right? So we have, maybe 5 Road to Nationals in total. I did expect this one to be the hardest one. Houston does have a larger scene, as well as, a lot of people from Texas and Oklahoma were traveling as well. So we did have a show out of about 40 to 50 players, so pretty decent size for here in North America. And I think it was a pretty strong field. I think that one will be a lot more competitive than some of the future ones I have coming up. So I was very happy to be able to go to the first one and pick up a win. That being said, it is 100% off the back of my teammates that have tested with me and helped me build this deck. We have been on this deck literally since week 0 working on it, and that's Hayden Dale and also Dante Delfico, as well with like a little sprinkle of Dan McKay. So big thank you to them. I definitely thought that I had the best deck in the room. My deck performed very, very well. And yeah, I kind of owe everything to those guys for helping me out. And I was very happy to, pull a 9-0 on the first one and, relax with my Nationals invite and my new tunic. After I sold my gold tunic, I'm happy to kind of have some pseudo replacement and got that awesome playmat as well.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. I mean, for me sitting over here in Australia over the weekend, just to that point, you spoke about Dan there as well. So not only did you take out a 9-0 and get your Nationals invite and a nice shiny rainbow foil tunic, we also had Dan playing the deck at a Road to Nationals in New Zealand, actually 2 Road to Nationals, where he took out a top 4. And as well, actually, I had a very good friend of mine, Dave Marshall, who ended up picking up a slightly tweaked list to this that I'd given to him, that he went all the way to the finals. Unfortunately, just falling short of the hurdle against Matt Rogers in New Zealand there. So, you know what? Awesome weekend for the deck and the team. Brendan, let's talk a bit about just quickly the matchup. So you went 9-0, obviously, so you didn't drop any games. But what did you play against? What was the meta like at the event that you were at?
Yeah, so I did something. This is like my biggest no-no before the tournament, and that's that. A little birdie told me there was a lot of Prism players, and I've said this, kind of on the podcast and in other videos, that I think that North American regions are defined by how attached they are to Prism or Dorinthia. It's one or the other. So I heard Houston was a bit Prism heavy, and I knew I wasn't super favorable against Prism. I thought I had the edge, but I could get high roll to the bank and just lose. So with that being said, I did throw 3 tech cards for Prism in my deck, and I'm happy I did that because I just cruised through my semifinals match, and I got a really nice win in Swiss as well because of it. But let's talk about the meta, right?
Yeah.
So I showed up and I expected a lot of control. I think control is a very, very safe pick right now. We're going to see a lot of control victories early in this meta because people are not going to know how to beat it. And the strategy you need to employ as a control player to beat a deck like this requires very little thought. We don't really need to discuss too much about if that's effective or not, but yeah, it's a very easy pick if you expect a lot of Chane and you think that strategy can win. That being said, I played quite a bit of aggro. I actually only played one Bravo, one control, but I played him both in the final round. We were both 5-0, and then played him in the finals as well. So he was obviously being very successful in that strategy. Other than that, I did play quite a bit of aggro. The funniest one for me is I matched up against Mech. Thought it was Mech control. Sided my deck for Mech control, and it ended up, he flipped a Tekla core, and it was like mega boost aggro dash. And I got like maximum velocity, like everything. So that was a pretty scary one. So like round 1, I played Dorinthia. It was a really interesting match because it was slightly back and forth, and like I just haven't played in person too much. So I had a bit of nerves, and I actually punted the first turn pretty badly. But he did switch up a strategy about halfway through and tried to fatigue me, which that almost never works if you're at like 20 sub health. So that's kind of, whatever. Then I played a Prism, who I beat with literally 0 cards left. Just had my 3 pitch cards, 0 cards, couldn't have attacked with anything else except a blade. We had the, 2 chain mirrors. I killed both of them with invert existence on their turn. I'd be saying a little bit too much, but it's just a funny way to win. A bit of a niche way to win in the mirror. And then, of course, talked about the boost dash. I'm trying to think there was one more. The last one is going to be the Bravo control, which was the final round to kind of pick who would get the top seed, which as the Chane player, you definitely really want to go undefeated in Swiss and have the pick, in my opinion.
Couldn't agree more. Cool. So obviously, awesome day. Congratulations again, Brendan. Why don't we jump in? And I've got the deck laid out here on the screen. We can talk through just some of the, I guess, the build of the deck. If people are really interested in Chane and what we've been working on here, you can actually go back to a Chane deck tech that we put out about 2 months ago now, post the ProQuest, where myself, Dan Mackay, and Mo in New Zealand had actually taken what Brendan and the team had been working on to start with, and took that into an event. To be honest, Brendan, we started with that base in testing in the past few weeks, right? Like, this is really iterative on where we were, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago.
So week 0 decked. Unfortunately, right?
As much as we tried,
as much as we tried, this is what we ended up on.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so Brendan, let's jump into it. So we've got the resources here, our blues, we've got the yellows in the middle here, obviously a bit of smaller, and we've got the reds. Just talk to us quickly about your equipment suite. So you decided to go with the 4 kind of core equipment in the Snapdragon Scalers, the Arcanite Skullcap, the Husk, of course, as we all know, the Grasp, but you've also got this Crown of Dichotomy.
Yeah, I think actually some people will be, some people will be surprised with this equipment suite, some won't. I know that a lot of other Chane players will play more equipment to kind of have the luxury to side in, side out. I didn't feel like I had the slots in my deck, and I also don't feel like you need it. I feel like this is really, really standard equipment. Pretty much everybody runs this anyway, and anything else getting a bit too fancy. That being said, Crown of Dichotomy is my only null rune. Obviously, that's for Viserai, because Viserai was featured on Devastation, so it's a deck that you are quite likely to face. But I'm not prepared for Kano, so hopefully not see Kano. I didn't see Kano. Doesn't mean it wasn't there. But, in order to kind of lose to Kano like that, the Kano player has to be successful. Either you get unlucky, you get paired on run, or the Kano player has to also be successful enough to face you in that Swiss. And the likelihood that they face other decks that run as few null rune as I do is quite low, unless everybody's net decking New Zealand, where I know in New Zealand people basically run null rune. So that was a gamble, but I went for it, and it paid off.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I did hear that at the Road to Nationals in Wellington, New Zealand, over the past weekend, there was a Kano who was sitting very near the top tables. I think very close to that top 8, just trading in on the fact that people weren't playing Nelrun. Unfortunately, couldn't make it to the top 8. So, all right, Brendan, tell us about the. So actually, Chris, quickly, Nebula Blade, still on Nebula Blade. No consideration for Galaxy Black or Reaping Blade or anything else here.
No, I mean, you've got a recyclable hit trigger on the weapon. Like, how much better does it get? I mean, your concerns with this weapon are going to be your resource base, but, test it and find out. If you find out that you're never able to swing your blade and you think Galaxy Back would be better, then there you go. That's the weapon for you. But for me, I like to threaten that rune channel. I like to come for 4, that breakpoint over 3. It's really, really important. I also do want to mention, we do have the full 74 cards laid out for you. So we're going to be staying a bit high level here. Not going to go too deep into the sideboard tech. I do suggest that if you have this deck, that you do have somewhere between a 44 and 53 card shell, and then you side in accordingly for each matchup. But won't be giving away too much of the sideboard tech because, like I said, I do have teammates that are all still competing for their first Road to Nationals, playing to compete in more Road to Nationals. Obviously, so am I, and I think that one of them would actually. He might explode if I give out all that tech. So we're going to keep it pretty high level.
I'm still fingers crossed that I get to play in a Road to Nationals. We'll see what happens when I'm allowed out of the house. But anyway, also just want to say as well, to expand on that point, Brendan, the list that you ended up playing, the list that Dan ended up playing this weekend, the list that Dave ended up playing, it was actually about 5 to 6 to 7 cards different between each of those lists. And I think a big part of that is that Chane can really be built in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that probably we've found without giving too much away is that there is cards that can be interchanged, sort of, I guess, flex slots in this deck, depending on meta, which, as Brendan said, a few hours before the event, grabs out 3 Ninth Blade because he wants to target his meta, he knows his meta. So I think, while you said, Brendan, a little bit unsure about making those kind of calls, sometimes they pay off. And in this case, definitely did. So, all right, Brendan, let's talk about the blues. Not much has changed in the blue suite hugely from that original list, but anything you want to talk about here in particular?
Yeah, I mean, some of the blues that have changed, I have been quite happy with. I did mention earlier, which might have been giving away too much, is that I did win both Chane mirrors with Invert Existence on my opponent's turn. Pretty effective, pretty funny card. I'm okay sharing that with you because I do think it's super niche to win that way. And when you do, you just kind of have to draw it. It's like a bit of kind of a lucky thing. Obviously, if it's sitting in Banish, it also threatens that kind of situation, but you are getting ticked down the blood debt, and your life can be pretty important in that matchup. Other than that, the blues are really standard. You're going to see things that I'm not playing that these other people that are, roughly on my team are going to be playing. It's things like Mutated Mass. There can just be some disagreements, or maybe I'm uncomfortable with some of those cards, don't like them in some matchups. But your blues are not, they're not going to be make or break. There are some that are very, very important, but I will let you find out, pick them, find out why, whatever, but definitely test it. I think that, I really want to talk quickly about Chane. The thing about Chane and why I'm comfortable sharing this deck, obviously Flesh and Blood is going to post on their website, but I do think that this deck is massively pilot based. It's a very, very, it's not a complex deck in aggro. Like you're going to the casino. It's very low skill in aggro matchups. Other matchups though, it borders on extremely difficult, and it is something that I do recommend you practice, why the cards are included, and, you find out what works for you. So this may not be the list for you, but this is what worked for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think I've seen a lot of different lists from players, and I think it's you've got to play to your own style. If you have a way that you want to play certain matchups, there's no point trying to shoehorn a deck list in there. But I think what we have here in the core that we built up, Brendan, is very strong. And I think if people want somewhere to start, then no better, to be honest, than a 9-0 deck list, right?
Yeah, and to kind of go off, talking more about the blues. If we look at it from like a macro concept, you are running the Nebula Blade. So you want some, like, there are going to be some blue non-tech actions that you're like, oh, why is this in there? Well, sometimes you need to be able to turn on your Nebula Blade. It's incredibly important. You can't just be Nebula Blading for one all the time. That's really weak, right? Then again, there are also some blues that are not Blood Debt. They're just attack actions. Sometimes you really need a target for Artivore. I mean, I'm very comfortable saying that a lot of aggro matchups are very, very centered around who draws their Artivore and who doesn't. So you really need to be able to get the Artivore off when you have it in hand, and you don't want your Nebula Blade coming in for one, because that sucks.
I don't know if people are aware, but and Brendan never talks about this, but he isn't a big fan of the Chane Mirror. I don't know if no one would know that though. He never mentions it. All right, Brendan. That's the blues. Anything else you want to say before we move on to what we've got here in the middle?
Nope. The blues are pretty standard. Honestly, the blues are something that you can get the most creative with. Whatever works for you, that's good. I found after extensive testing, these are the blues that I landed on. The blues is actually the section that you're going to find the most difference across. If you looked at my list, Dan's list, or I forget your friend's name that
Dave,
just competed.
Which was my list effectively. Yeah. So you will see some differences there. Personal preference and just play style, I think, plays into that. All right, Brendan, we've got the yellows here. Pretty standard look here. Anything you want to say? Obviously, we know about the ninth blades that you decided to put in. Anything else?
We got to talk about the ninth blade. The ninth blade is Slayer. So the ninth blade was another card. Before, it was a very good card, very standard card, but I only needed it for a matchup where I felt extremely confident already. Like the card that used to be there for ninth blade was, I only needed that card against the best players on that pilot. Even then, I still didn't feel like I needed it. So I expected a lot of Prism. I didn't want to get high rolled and just lose. I hate that. Honestly, Prism, you say I don't like the Chane Mirror, but I really don't like playing against Prism either. It feels very uninteractive sometimes. So you throw in those ninth blades, and man, it just is a big rain on their parade. And like I said, in Swiss, I ended a game with 0 cards left to attack with other than my blade and the 3 pitch cards I had. So basically 0 cards in deck. And then my semis, man, I just high rolled my my draws to a win. I had ninth blade, I had Command and Conquer. Like every time I had ninth blade, it was Herald of Triumph, and every time he had like an Erudition or a Herald of Judgment, it was a Command and Conquer. And I think I ended at almost 30 health, so I got very, very lucky in my semis. I had a very easy match, which was nice going into the finals. But yeah, the yellow sweep, nothing too exciting. I think that we talked before we submitted, we kind of had a list that had Shades of Eminence for this card, Seeping Seeds of Agony. And I think that obviously that card's out of the deck for a reason. I think it's a high variance card. I think it's a bad card. Never liked it, to be honest. And yeah, you're going to be playing 9 Seeds of Agony. It's one of the best cards in your deck for multiple reasons: arcane damage, non-attack action, and blood debt. So
and
great
free.
card there. Yeah, and free.
Yeah, very important. Cool. All right, Brendan, let's talk about the red suite. I've broken this out. So we've got our attack actions here, and then we've got our non-attack actions down here. Pick your poison. Where do you want to start?
We'll start with the attack actions. So we do have kind of our standard blood debt here. We've got Unhallowed Rites, Ghostly Visit, Bounding Demigon, and Riftbind. Those are going to be in every deck. I haven't seen a deck that doesn't run them. They're extremely powerful, and they're good for a reason. So I don't think there's anything too interesting going on there. You are going to see something weird here, which is Rip Through Reality. That is a slightly experimental card. if you do want to try out that card, I recommend you test it first and try it, because I could also submit a list. Like I could go to another event next week and this could not be in my list. So that is a funky card. The cost is weird, but you'll be able to find out the upside if you try it, or the downside. So we do have Command and Conquer and Lightning Strike, cards I'm never a fan of putting in my deck, especially a very thematic deck like this. But I think we've talked about this plenty enough to kind of be open with it, is that the Chane deck originally was very thematic, right? Like it was very Blood Debt heavy. It would be very weak on Shackle 1 through 4, and then kind of build up with building a lot of Blood Debt and having big turns. That's okay, but you can do that, or you can just be good on Shackle 0 through 4 and Shackle 4 through 7. So you can just be good all the time. And these cards, while they are high variance because they can get banished, and they suck when they get banished, they're not good, of course. In Lightning Strike, Command and Conquer is just great value in this format. A lot of people don't want to block you. Command and Conquer is fantastic for that. Like Command and Conquer just wrecks some of these aggro matchups, especially Ninja. Like Ninja does not like Command and Conquer. E-Strike, just great value for you as well. And you can do a lot of funky things with that card. Yep. And then, of course, we have Soul Reaping. Soul Reaping is the craps table of this deck. If you get it, it owns. Like, it's really good every single time. They can get banished, and then it's gone. But, risk versus reward, if we did a little equation there, Soul Reaping is going to come out on top every time. If you could have 3 of these in your deck, of course you would. I mean, I have 10. They're so good.
Yeah. And I think just going back to these core non-Runeblade or non-Shadow attack actions here, you can go back and watch our original video on this if you want a bit more of an in-depth on just some of the decisions of why and when to play these cards. But yeah, I mean, they definitely do a very important job to support this package. All right, Brendan, we've got the non-attack actions over here. Some pretty standard stuff. There's some cards, that people...
Some standard stuff.
Yeah, some. But then, even some lists have, gone without plunder runs for things like Razor Reflex, stuff like this. We know your views on that. Talk to us about some of these, though.
So I will tell you a funny story about these. So out of these, 12, what are we looking at? 14 cards here. Mm-hmm. There's only 6 of them that I've never taken out of the deck, and those are very standard. It's going to be Seeds of Agony, Shadow Puppetry. Those are just staples in Runeblade. I think they're going to be in every deck. They're just incredibly valuable. Obviously, Seeds is never not going to be a deck. Maybe I'll eat my words on the day. I don't think so. I don't think so. But Shadow Puppetry, that go again is super important, and obviously the on-hit trigger. This deck is full of on-hit triggers. A lot of people will come to me and talk about this format not being like too many on-hit triggers for some reason, but I don't know. This is like the most on-hit trigger focused format I've ever seen in Shadow Runeblade. This Nebula Blade has a recyclable in a permanent on the field, and also your deck is just full of them. A lot of stuff the opponent wants to block, or you can just do some really degenerate stuff. The most interesting card here is going to be Tome of Torment. I don't want to go too much into that card, but let's just say I hate that card in theory. Like I would have never thought to put it in my deck. I put it in my deck because Jason Chung mentioned it was his favorite card. That is the most experimental card in this deck. It is super likely to come out for something else, but it's interesting. I like it, and it has a very, very niche use case for me. Other than that, we can talk about Plunder Run as well. I think that, as a Chane player, your game in an aggro matchup or a mid-range matchup is mostly going to be hinged on Art of War and Plunder Run. Plunder Run, I actually considered cutting it for a while because it's bad in so many places, right? It's pretty bad out of hand. It's bad to block with. It's bad to pitch. It's bad in Banish, of course. It's only good in Arsenal. So I don't know. It seems like it's a bit high variance there, but still it's so good when it's an Arsenal that it seems like it's a must play. And that +3, because a lot of your stuff attacks for 4, makes a breakpoint of 7. And that breakpoint can be pretty brutal. So we're talking about a, kind of a on-hit trigger that'll let you draw a card. Yeah. And if you're having multiple attack actions on the combat chain, which is what Chane does, Plunder Run, it just increases in value. So big a fan of that card. But yeah, and then Howl from Beyond as well. So Howl from Beyond, big fan as well. I think I'm a big fan of every card in my deck, but I really like Howl for pumping certain abilities, getting to new breakpoints. I mean, obviously it can be used on Command and Conquer. That might be a little that should be pretty obvious, but I don't think a lot of Chane players see that immediately. But Command and Conquer for 9 is pretty good, especially if it's like if you come in with an attack before, if they don't have the defense reaction. So there's I don't know. We're getting a little bit too much into micro gameplay, but Howl from Beyond is a very modular card, and I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about some of these quickly as well, just my views on some of these. Plunder Run, I think you said, it's only good out of Arsenal. I think it is reasonable out of hand, like just to clarify. I think, obviously it's a non-attack action, right? Which is important for Nebula Blade. How is, as you said, a card that we've tried not having some copies in the deck. As it turns out, because of a number of reasons, which, if you play test this deck and play some games, you'll work out pretty quickly. It's super important. And in most matchups, you just can't be cutting that card. Tome, I know from our group, Brendan and I have been the highest on Tome probably for the longest. It's a card that I really like. I wanted to see work, and yeah, I think there is uses for this card. They're just not maybe as obvious as some other cards because of there's a bit of a cost to it. But yeah, the card is pretty reasonable. Cool. All right, Brendan, so we've talked through the deck. Anything else you want to say? Obviously, congratulations again, Brendan. 9-0, grabbing that Nationals invite first weekend and that nice rainbow foil tunic. Congratulations to the other guys as well back in New Zealand, securing their invite through the first week as well. Weekend 1, 3 invites. So I think I was trying to add it up before. I think the total record of this deck plus iterations is somewhere around like 85-90% win rate, so really really good weekend for the team there.
Oh god, it makes it sound pretty good. But yeah, I just want to talk about again, like, we do have 74 cards sitting in front of you. I do recommend that you have a 44 to 53, maybe 56 kind of base deck, and you're going to sideboard in accordingly for each match. We talk about this a lot in the podcast. I think that having a shell is one of the best things you can do in Flesh and Blood deck building, and then you just put in cards that you need. So you need to have an identity for your deck. What is your deck trying to do? What does it want to do every single game? That's your core, and then everything else is sideboard and stuff you put in after that. But other than that, I just want to defer all congratulations back onto my teammates and everybody who stuck with me through this past month and a half where we worked on this deck. That's Hayden Dale, Dante Delfico, and like I said, a little sprinkle of Dan McKay. Like, the amount of testing that I did and the amount of work I put in, not only in this deck but also improving as a player, is what got me there. So I'm very appreciative to all of you guys for helping me out. And yeah, I'm happy for Arsenal Pass. It looks like it works. We practice what we preach, right?
100%. All right, until next time. Thanks, everyone.